Hello, my fellow believers and my beautiful, beautiful brothers and sisters. Today, I wanted to record an episode. This is a little different because I am not adding video to this. Father, for now, is wanting me to strictly do voiceovers because I don't have a proper camera, and my laptop camera, when I make videos, it just takes up too much memory. And I just don't have access right now to more memory for my laptop or a camera, and yada yada. This is still a fairly new laptop to me, so though I've backed things up on my cloud and things, I'm having a problem trying to get it off my computer and not also delete it off my cloud at the same time. So I'm having to figure that out. So for right now, Father told me make do with what you got, so we're just going to do some voiceovers. And sometimes I feel like that can almost be better because, looking at somebody in general can be a little distracting for some people. So I'm here to deliver a message today. Now, it's taken me a long while to come back to YouTube because I was going through an immense amount of warfare. I was going through a lot of things that weren't necessarily keeping me from wanting to do this, but keeping me from being able to be clear-headed enough to make even to even make a video, to focus enough to have a subject to research, study it, add it and experience and testimony in with it. It was just too much. I was just going through too much at the time. God was asking me to make a big move. He was asking me to make a leap of faith, and I will mention that later on in this video. So this video today, he wanted me to speak on purpose and its concept in God's eyes, not the world's eyes. I will share how I'll share how I found my purpose. But again, that's only a singular testimony. But I can give you my testimony and my experience and the reference of God in that. And you will be able to see God in that and understand that he thinks about purpose just a little bit differently than the world would make you believe or understand about purpose. It's almost like the world gives you a misconception of what true purpose is. So, I'm going to try to keep it clear and limited to just kind of the overview of things. But because it can be a little bit of a complex story, and there's even testimonies within the testimony. So I can do videos on a bunch of the things that have happened through this journey. But this is just kind of an overview on what's led me to YouTube and to follow the things that God has called me to do and given me the gifts to do. So, I will have scriptures that go in line with this as well. I'm sure that there's many more scriptures that would back up what's going on with me and what has gone in my situation. But I just wanted to share some special verses and things that God has definitely leaned me into. I will also be making a website very soon to these YouTube videos because you'll understand why at the end of the video. But I will be making a website pretty soon so that you guys can go on my website and download the notes from my videos if you want them, and a little bit of not necessarily a worksheet, but a reflection sheet, if you want to ask yourself questions about your own life and reflect with God with that piece of paper. And there will be many more things that come to the website, but that will be the basis of it for now. And if you guys, choose to sew or anything like that, that's what God leads you to, then obviously, like everybody else, I'll have the links on my website. I don't really want to post it on YouTube. I don't want to cheapen God's message. I don't want that to be the reason I'm here. If he, is leading one of you to sow into me, he will make that clear and you will find a way to do it. And I know that. So let's get into the situation here. Let me turn off my heater real quick. You also might hear some noise in the background. That would be my animals. I'm living in a hotel room with my dog and my cat right now, and my cat is like in teenager mode, so she's kind of noisy sometimes. She likes to play a lot. And the heater's just really loud too, so I gotta cut that off for a minute. Anyway, so the first thing I want to say about purpose is if you clicked on this video, I think my cat trapped herself in the bathroom. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry, guys. Yeah, you stay out there. No. Goodness. She just loves to be a tyrant, and it's okay. It's okay. She's the cutest little thing. She's actually the cat that was mentioned in my last YouTube video, and it was a testimony about how even in your biggest storms that God will still send you a little white flag, like a little blessing, just to let you know that he hears you. But anyway, you can look at that video if you want to, but she is getting much older now, and she is definitely having a heyday some days. Anyway, so back to purpose. If you clicked on this video, then I know that you're wondering about your own purpose, and I've been there so many times in my life. It probably started when I was really, really, really young. Obviously people start asking you those questions of like, what are you going to be when you're older and everything. And I didn't realize it until I got older, but when I was younger, I changed what I wanted to do a lot. I wanted to be a chemist for the EPA. I wanted to be a professional illustrator. I wanted to be a tattoo artist. I wanted to be a medic in the Marines, or even like an engineer. I did go to college briefly for mechanical engineering, but decided to switch my major to illustration before I felt like the things that I was called to do and the things that I was going to do in life didn't require college. I just was in college long enough to figure out that I did not need that to do what I was going to do. I didn't know how to explain that. My family didn't really love that idea, but they trusted me. So, or they just, think I'm crazy still. One of the two. Either way. I just changed it so many times over the years. I was probably 19 when I quit college. And then I worked, in the medical field for a while, and I worked in these different places. And I learned a lot about what I wanted as far as employment and what I enjoyed out of employment. And I personally enjoy subcontract work or contracting work where I'm working on my own. I don't have very many people over me, and if I am with somebody or working with somebody and I'm a subcontractor, we're all working as a team to make things happen, and I can appreciate that. But when people are on W-2 salary and all that stuff, I just don't like dealing with it. I don't like dealing with the things that come with it, and that's just me. So I knew that I wanted to own my own business. I wanted to help people. I knew that I was good at writing. I knew I was good at art. I was a pretty good, not say musician. I haven't made any music of my own yet, but I was musically inclined, and I have been since I was very young. And that's something that God has always told me that, is going to be a big part of my life, but we have not reached that season yet. So anyway, as you can tell, for a long time, I was up and down about my purpose. I'm 26 years old now, and I only just now got this revelation in my life because I listened and because I laid my skills and my gifts at God's feet. And that's kind of where this starts. So this might be a little bit longer of a video because it is a testimony. And like I said, I'm going to try to keep it as a general overview. If you guys want me to maybe make another video to go more in depth, or you want to see more Bible verses and ways that God spoke to me through my wilderness and through all of this, and you want to and you just want more kind of like scriptural references and things like that, then you will be able to see that on my website eventually. Here in within the next couple weeks to a month, I will have the website going. I just have to get the funds to do the domain and get on Squarespace and whatnot. But anyway, so I again had multiple gifts and positions in life. I had been in a lot of different kinds of jobs and career fields. And that's kind of like, I didn't know it, but I was living purpose as God kind of intends us to live purpose. Purpose is a journey, not a destination. And I want you guys to all know that. Anybody who clicked on this video right now, like, you think that a job is the end all be all, or being a mom is the end all be all. But I promise you that your identity in Christ and your identity as a person is not wrapped around the things that you do. It's not wrapped around the things that you are, and it's not wrapped around any particular career that you have. Your purpose is a journey, not a destination. Okay, so through your life and the purpose that God has specifically, like think about this, like in a tool bag, like you use a screwdriver to screw in screws, but you wouldn't use a screwdriver to hammer in a nail, right? And so God has set us aside for different uses and different purposes. And so let's say that, you're a screwdriver and God is using you to screw in screws. He may use you to build a house. He may use you to work on a car. He may use you to build a model plane. Who knows what he's going to use you as, because, but like, you are a screwdriver, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to explain here, is that over your life, your purpose will be lived out until you die, right? So it's a journey, not a destination. You might have multiple careers. You might open multiple businesses. He might call you to work in your gifts for just the free will of things. It might not even be something that's tied to your career. And he might call you to different positions in life throughout your life. He might call you to be a mother or father. He might call you to be the best aunt or uncle in the world. He might call you to be to start a nonprofit and be that person. He might call you to be a foster parent. Like, he might put you in positions in life because of the gifts and the skill sets that you possess naturally, innately, that he put inside of you. And so essentially, you can do any of these things, but God can, there's only really one or two ways and during a season in which you can be used at your best. You can be used to serve in God's will at your best. And so, an easy way to assess, if you're lost, you can sit down with God and be like, okay, why am I here? And if you can't sit there and maybe understand and connect the dots in your life, you don't have as much of a close relationship with God as you want to. You don't have that direct line of communication. You just don't, you're not there yet. That's okay. The first thing you can do is pray to him and say, hey, Lord, in this moment, I just want you to know that I am searching for purpose. You have to let him know that that's something that you're searching for, that you're finally coming to his feet and saying, hey, I want to know what you set me aside to be and do, right? And that may not even be a job. He might set you aside to be an evangelist, but whatever job you hold, whatever this or that, you have the skill sets of being an evangelist within that, right? So basically, it would be easiest to write down a good list of your gifts and your talents and take a good, run over of these things and look at it. This can be, abstract things. This can be actually obvious things. Like, let's say you're good at playing saxophone. You're good at playing, you're good at singing. You're good at writing. Or you might even be really good at organizing things and cleaning things. You might be really good at being a mediator for people. You might be really good at bringing people down from a ledge. Those kinds of things. Whatever it is, it's what you possess. And so you take account of these things and you look at them and you say, God, I recognize the strengths of which you've put in me. And then you write down your weaknesses, okay? Write down your weaknesses and the things that you're not good at, that you probably should improve with, whether it be in a spiritual sense, and an emotional sense, a physical sense. You might not be very good at organizing, so you might want to get better at organizing. or you're not very good at being consistent with certain things or finishing projects. So that's something that you want to do, is somebody who is consistent and follows through. Maybe you are really creative when it comes to doing things, but you're not very good at coming up with ideas, that sort of thing. So you write down a list of your gifts and your talents, and you write down a list of your weaknesses, and you give it to God, and you say, hey, I cannot go in my own will anymore and pretend I know what to do with these things. Because what you're basically handing him is like a list of cake ingredients, okay, that he gave you, that he put inside of you. But the thing is with you is you don't know what kind of cake you're supposed to make. You don't know what kind of, you know that these ingredients make a cake, but you don't know what kind of cake he's having you make. You don't know what kind of cake he's destined for you to make. So like you're handing him a list of the ingredients and you're saying, hey, Lord, will you teach me how to bake this cake? Will you tell me what kind of cake we're going to bake? Right? So in that, you will discover your why. You will discover your why. Why am I here? Why do I have these gifts? Why do I have these talents? And it might be to make a difference. It might be to serve. It might be to make a new community project, whatever it is. You discover your why, right? And then after your why, and you have these gifts and talents, and you start working on your weaknesses, you start doing low-level service for experience in this place. So like right now, I'm on YouTube. I'm not very experienced with this platform. I'm not going to pretend like I'm super tech savvy either. For as young as I am, I've always been very, not necessarily against technology, but against what technology has done to us. And so you actually won't even, sorry for the noise, everyone. You actually won't even catch me like watching TV very often. Like you won't watch me, catch me do, like if it's not educational and it's not something that's adding to my life, if I'm going to watch 5 minutes of this video and it's just going to waste 5 minutes of my life, like you probably won't catch me watching it. So like I said, I'm just not very versed with technology. It's not my favorite thing. I'm a traditional artist even. I am an artist, and I prefer a paintbrush and paint still even. So that's just the way that God made me. God made me to be a bit of a traditionalist, to hold down the better parts of what that gave to us and maybe incorporating some new things into the future. So basically, I'm on here to get some experience, because there is more than one part to my purpose, and this is going to be something that leads into my comfortability to be able to fully step into the other one. Okay, so right now I'm doing low-level service for experience. So first you discover, your list of your gifts and talents. You give it to God. He gives you your why. You build a relationship with him, and he helps you understand your why, right? So then you start doing low-level service for experience to maybe work up to these things. And then after that, you might do some advanced service to apply the previous experience so you get better at this thing. So let me try to make an example of this. Let's say when you're a kid, you're very interested into gardening. Like your grandma has a garden, you're very interested in gardening. So for low-level experience, you start a little garden at your house, and you get really good at it. You learn the different plants, what they need, the great food, bad food, what's bad for them, how to get rid of bugs, like all of these things that you need to do to keep a good garden. You learn to do these things. And then you find that you're actually really, really good at growing plants, that God has put, like, given you the ability and the gift to kind of just understand the plants and what they need, and he's blessed you with favor and the ability to grow things for people. So you discover you're really good at growing food. And so for advanced service, you might actually apply to do, gardening service with your community garden. You might get interested in it, and you might join on with a landscaping company for your work. But it's advanced service to apply the previous experience that you started with, right? You're a kid and you're in your garden. Now you're like 18 and you need a job, so you start doing landscaping. Well, now you're learning more on a more professional scale, on a more just on a bigger scale on how to apply that experience, which thus gives you more seasoned experience, right? So then, you will always be put in a position, and it's kind of funny how God does this, but once you get good at a skill, God will put you in a position to do something really big, right? So like I made a lot of little paintings when I was younger and a lot of little drawings and stuff, but it wasn't until that I started my first mural that I felt like I was able to finally apply my skills of all the years of painting these little things and these concepts and drawing all of this time of experience. I was able to apply it on a bigger scale to something that I've always wanted to do, right? So God might come along and be like, okay, now you've done landscaping and you're really good at gardening, and you might like actually landscape so much that you step away from gardening, right? And you're like, okay, I don't have time to do that anymore. But then you might get injured at work and you get workman's comp, so you're getting paid, but you're back at home and you rediscover your love for gardening. But now you have the idea to, on a professional mass scale, you have the ability and the knowledge to know how to start a greenhouse or maybe even like a community garden. It's just God places it on your heart to start a community garden. So you might start a community garden, which is the testing phase. Okay, so you got your low-level service for experience. Then you got your advanced service, which is, applied experience and gaining more in-depth experience. And then God will test all of that to see where you are at, where your heart lies with all of that, and if you're going to give it to Him or not. And then on top of that, to see if you can do that big thing, right? To see if you could paint that mural, to see if you can actually make a community garden. So He might test you and you get this idea. He might test you to see if you actually do it, if you actually fall in line with what He's asking you to do. So you go start this community garden. And it's so good. It's such a, like, let's say it pops off and your community garden is so big that it's actually feeding 4 towns around you and your whole community because of the rate and because of the way that you're able to grow these things and the experience that you have and the way that you can apply it and God's knowledge, and the Holy Spirit working through you. Now you've got this giant community garden that's efficient, that feeds more than one community, and you're giving, people who don't have a lot of money, they might not have a lot of resources, they might not have, food and access to healthy food at that, so you're doing God's work, right? But let's say it gets so big that one day God sends somebody to you and says, hey, what you're doing here is really amazing, and our country is having a bad time with poisoned food, antibiotics, and all of these other things. And you see this investor who's also a man of God come along and say, hey, would you want to learn how to do this on a national scale, start multiple community gardens, change the world, right? That's when you get to the compiled ultimate purpose. Okay, that's when you might not even, at this point, you might even be 60 years old. You've got this community garden that you're running, but it's so good that it's caught national attention. And now you start this nationally owned nonprofit that does community gardens and sets up new ones and has an efficient system to be able to go into places and set up these community gardens and plant real and good food for their people. And then, at the end of your life, and you're looking at all the people that you've helped, all the people that you've fed, and they turn around and they make your life comfortable because God places it on their heart. That ultimately is a compiled purpose, okay? Along the way, you might have brought some people to God even. Some people may have come to your community garden, saw your kindness, saw your way of life, saw the way that you grew food for other people, and were inspired to go do their own thing. Like, that alone is incredible. That's our purpose, and that's our job here, is to bring people to God and to understand the unfailing love and ultimate amazingness of God. And if you allow Him to work through you, then at the end of your life, you will realize that there is a compiled purpose to the way that you were and the way that God had you live and the way that you've been. And so this might be more obscure for some people and it might be more obvious to others. For instance, for me, mine was a bit more obscure. It took me a really long while to understand, because I was I was in the background when I was younger. I was that kid that moved around a lot. I was really scrawny. I had those buck teeth. Like, I was just, that girl who grew up in a trailer. And so at the end of the day, I never thought that I'd be somebody that would be speaking to people or teaching people. I never thought that I would be a person who would actually have the courage and the determination to change people's lives in a really big way and have the understanding on how to do that in a lot of different ways, right? And so at this point, I never thought that God would call me to speak, right? Because I'm really good at people care. I was a caretaker for a long time. I'm really good with animals. I'm really good with writing and having a good ear for music and the way that it's written. Like, there's just lots of things. Like I said, I was good at mediating between people. I was just really good at these kind of obscure things. And so that's why I brought my list to God, because I said, these are all just so kind of obscure and don't connect. Like, how do I make this into a purpose? How do I start all of this? Because years before, when I was maybe, how do you say it, indulging in things that, looking for truth in places that maybe wasn't the best. I could have found truth without those things. But during that time, I understood basically my potential, and I was shown in the visions where God wanted to take me. And it was so huge that I almost laughed in God's face. I almost I actually did. I tucked my tail for a long time and was too flabbergasted about it to even comprehend how any of that could happen with somebody as small as me, right? Just one person, just one believer who has been through a lot of things in her life. And I just couldn't have imagined that. But as time goes on, I will get into kind of the more testimony part of things. You'll start to understand how God is leading me into purpose and how he helped me understand it. So basically, as far as a journey with these things, that's the easiest way I can break it down to you, that your gifts and your talents. You kind of discover your why you like to do these things and why you would want to help other people with it. You find a need, and then now you have some low level experience. You find some advanced service and applied experience. God will test that, and then ultimately you will have a compiled purpose, in the end, and it will start to be more clear for you. By the end of your days, your puzzle will be complete. So things take time to learn and apply. That's a big reason why purpose is not a destination and why it's a journey, because it takes a really long time to learn and apply certain things. And again, with like the gardening example, like that man it took him a while to understand how these plants need to be fed, at what point you should plant them, at what point you harvest them, what temperatures they needed to grow in, and what amount of humidity they needed, what amount of plant food, etc. that they needed, right? It took a long time for him to learn and apply those things to where it could be a conducive thing for other people. So it's, that's something that I've experienced in my own life, where it's taken me a long time to learn and apply things when it comes to especially like psychology and mental health and the connection between that and faith and a whole bunch of things. Those are my special interests as, a person who has a special brain. God made my brain a little extra special, and it goes a little too fast for my own good sometimes, but we work on that. And one of the big things he had me interested in is mental health and how that connects to spirituality, and how incorporating spirit into mental health treatment, as well as healing your soul is a key component to mental health treatment, and making progress with that and actually being healed instead of continuing to put band-aids on your life through pills and continuous therapy that doesn't make a difference. So I personally find those things very interesting, and he's helped me find a way to speak to people and spread his word in a way that is healing for other people, which is incredible. But it took me a really long time studying and learning in my own life and fighting things in my own life that allowed me to have the life experience to now be in a position where I had that low level experience, and now I'm able to kind of maybe start doing some advanced service, and apply the experience that I've learned. So I do really want to do some supporting scriptures with all of this, and this is just a few. During my testimony, there is many along the way that God has given me to give me strength in things to find my purpose. But as far as just on the subject of purpose itself, there's a few Bible verses that I want to read. So I'm getting my notes out here, and okay, so. Exodus 9:16. And if you guys don't have a Bible present, that's okay. I will always read these Bible verses with you. You can always go back, and again, when I have the website, it will have all of the Bible verses and their context in which they're applied, and it will, again, have those worksheets for you. So, or those reflection sheets. But Exodus 9:16. But we have raised you up for this very purpose, that I might show you my power, and that my name might be proclaimed in all of the earth. Okay, so I have raised you up for this very purpose. Okay, so God, that's just showing you that God raises people up. He births people for specific purposes. And it really is just at the end of the day to edify everybody's love for him and to proclaim his power and his might and his ability over all the earth. I've heard a lot of atheists and a lot of people throw at me that like we have an arrogant God, that we have a like God with an ego, like a really big ego, but at the end of the day, if you don't understand the complete actual mercy of God and how that works, and the love of Jesus and how his sacrifice was the ultimate sacrifice, not just in that context, but if you don't understand the actual depth of which that goes, then you really kind of don't understand how to it would be hard to understand and how do you say it, spread the good news to other people. And so basically God comes into your life and he has a purpose for you. So he comes in and he shakes things up. You learn of his goodness and his greatness, and then he gives you a way to turn that pain into purpose, right? And because you're healed, and because these things have happened, because God has come into your life and done these things for you, because you gave your life to him, then you will come to people and show them, again, his power and his might, and it will all be a reflection for him and to bring people to him, which is the ultimate purpose, of all of us disciples, that we need to be bringing people to the deeper understandings of God's love and just how deep his grace is. Another Bible verse that goes with this is Romans 8:28. And it says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, those who have been called according to his purpose. So a lot of people use that verse for many different reasons and many different ways as well. But I will say that, in this context, he said for those who love him. So like how can God work out things in your favor if you don't give him the things to do that? So it's like if you want him to help you make the cake and you want him to show you how to make the cake, you have to be able to give him your ingredients, basically. And so, for all things, God works for the good of those who love him, and you love him, and he does all good things in line for you if you are walking in his purpose. They're called according to his purpose. He wants you to enact this on the earth. And so, he will make every bad thing, every crazy thing that's ever happened to you, he will turn it into purpose. Okay? So that's just another reference of, God helping us understand that we were born for a specific purpose and not like just a career or just this or just that. It may look like that on an earthly aspect. You may feel like you were born to just be a mom or to be just this and just that. And God never wanted your identity to be caught up in just any one thing, because it makes it an idol. It makes it something that you put above him, and you fear, because then you fear to lose it. And that's when you create an opportunity for God to come in and have to take it anyway, because you're putting something over him. So purpose is not just a label or a hat that you wear, but it's who you are. It's in your being. It's being something. It's not doing something always, right? It's understanding and being something, okay? Being exactly what God called you to be. In every situation. You go into the gas station, you spread that kindness and love. You go into work, you spread that kindness and love. You're at home with your family, you spread God's kindness and his love, right? That's your purpose, okay? So I will also reference Romans 9:11 through 24. So it says, yet before the twins were born or had done anything good or bad, in order that God's purpose and oh man, my handwriting is terrible. God's purpose and election might stand, not by works, but by him who calls. She was told, the older will serve the younger, just as it is written. So there's like talking about Jacob and his, his brothers and stuff. So Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. What then shall we say? Is God unjust? No, not at all. For he says to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. It does not therefore depend on human desire or your effort, but on God's mercy. For the scripture says to Pharaoh, I raised you up for this very purpose, that I might display my power in you, and that my name might be proclaimed in all of the earth. Again, be proclaimed in all of the earth. That's a second Bible verse that's saying that. Therefore, God shows mercy on whom he wants to have mercy on, and he hardens those who he wants to harden. One of you will say to me, and then why does God still blame us for those who is able to resist his will? But who are you, a human being, to talk back to God? Shall what is formed say to the one who formed it, why did you make me like this? Does the potter not have the right to make out of the same lumps of clay some pottery for special use and some for common use? What if God, although choosing to show his wrath and make his power known, bore great patience to the subjects of his wrath, prepared for great destruction? What if he did this to make the riches of his glory known for the objects of his mercy, whom he has prepared in advance for his glory, even us, whom he called, not only from Jesus, but all from the Gentiles? So I kind of want to break that down a little bit. It kind of hit me in a way when I was like trying to discover my purpose. It hit me in such a way because he basically was talking about, I'm going to put it in a simple way, the simplest way I can. So let's say that Jimi Hendrix was born, right? And though he was good at guitar and things like this, and he was good at singing, imagine if he looked at that and, was scared of his talents. What if he liked it but didn't like to go on stage and decided to, be like, why me? Like, why is it me that got famous? Why is it me that's given this? And he doesn't do something with it. Then he would totally miss out on the opportunity to be who God called him to be, right? So God has set aside all of us, each one, for an individual purpose. And whoever's team you kind of deserve to, or choose to serve, God will still use you because he's God. He has hands in all things. So if you decide you're working for the enemy, though the enemy, might influence you and everything, he might actually use you as a subject to maybe soften somebody else's heart. He might use you as a subject to, you might hurt somebody because he knows that you do that, but it might also teach that other person how to lean on God in understanding, right? Because either way, one person searching for God, one person decided that they're going to do whatever they want, and so God put those people together for an ultimate purpose, right? And so his ways are not our ways. These are not ways that we could understand really at the end of the day, and it's not for us to argue, hey, you put me up against a big purpose, Lord. You're calling me to do all these things, and how could I ever be this, or how could I ever be a pharaoh? How could I ever be a king? Like, imagine Joseph never embraced, like, he allowed the prison and the pit to defile him to a point and discourage him to a point where he was never king, He gave up on God's purpose for him. Like, he was used along the way to teach other people. All right, sorry about that, guys. My laptop died in the middle of me recording. So, as I was saying, basically, imagine if, like, Joseph had never been able to be king. Imagine if he had never allowed, like, he allowed the Jezebel to get all up in him, and he allowed, being in the pit and being in jail to affect him. Imagine him not listening to God and not deciphering dreams, or, just allowing his emotions to get the best of him instead of his faith in God. And at the end of the day, I know it's really hard to stand next to purpose. It's really hard to stand next to who you are, who God's called you to be, because it's so much easier sometimes to just fit into the way the world is. It's so much easier to be relatable, to be passable. But at the end of the day, God's calling you to be bold and to walk in your purpose and to be exactly who you've been called to be, and nothing else, right? So it's not for us to really understand, again, like, how things are done. Like, if Joseph hadn't done what he had done and Moses hadn't done what he had done, all the way down the line, Jesus wouldn't have been born. Okay? Like, he still would have been born, but it wouldn't have been on a pure lineage, because Joseph's lineage could be traced all the way back to Adam, right? Adam's lineage. And so, all the people that came before Jesus, imagine if they didn't do what God called them to do. Imagine where we'd be right now. So it's not really for us to argue. It's not really for us to say if we can handle it or not. I mean, for a long time, I wrestled with my purpose. And this was a big verse that he gave me, and a big passage that he gave me to study on and to sit on for a while, because it kind of was hard for me to wrap my mind around because of what he's calling me to do. I had little ugly duckling, nobody wants to be her friend in school syndrome, where I got picked on by my family. I got picked on at school. I got picked on by my exes. I just have had a hard time in life. And so I never thought that I could ever be set aside for special use for God. But then when I was an artist, I understood, like, God's like, okay, if you're writing a book and you're writing it by hand, do you use your good pens for the first draft? And I was like, no, I guess you don't. You use your, like, little ballpoint pens that, cost $1 that you can throw away and get a pack of 15 of them. He's like, exactly. So you do your rough drafts, you do your editing and all of this stuff, but then you save your pens, your special pens, your calligraphy pens for that final draft, right? And so that's kind of exactly what he was talking about with, like, the molder and the clay. Like, he set you aside as a child of God for a special purpose, and that is to be exactly who you are and to bring people to God in that, to be a reflection of Jesus in our lives no matter what we're doing, and allowing people to come to God because of that. And whatever that is, again, it might be in line with your gifts, it might be in line with your talents, it might be in line with your job, whatever it is. That's why it's important to have a relationship with God, because he will be able to kind of point you in the direction in which you need to go to understand your purpose. And so with giving this testimony, hopefully I can give a little bit more clarity, because I know this is kind of an abstract subject. I know it's not just one clean-cut answer for you, but I just wanted you guys to understand that it is a journey. It's not a destination. You might have multiple careers and gifts and positions in life, but it ultimately is just you being you, what God called you to be. So, but again, I was unsure, as a child and early adult, but I had many ideas as far as what I wanted to be. I always felt like I was good at certain things, but was unsure of, how to channel it all in a way that would glorify God. Okay, I'm changing my notes over here, guys. So my life went through a lot of changes, ups and downs, jobs here, jobs there. And then in 2020, I met a man who became a really good friend of mine, and we became friends, and God asked me to stick it out for him. Now, this guy had been through some questionable things. He might have still had some very earthly friends that did questionable things as well. And so there was just, a lot of worldly things going on. But this man just had this heart. I could see his heart as a believer. I could see that his heart was pure. I could see that he had been places and he had truly repented of all of that and was trying to be a different person, was trying to be a renewed person. And God did not want him to hit struggles and be lost again. He didn't want that man who was just about to give his life to God and give his life, over to that understanding and be a healthy person. He didn't want him to walk astray and be led astray. So he asked me to be a part of his life. He asked me to be a friend to him because I saw in him, the sacrifices that my father made for me when my dad was a single dad. I just saw so much of the beautiful, sacrifices that a beautiful dad makes for his children and for his family. And I saw the very hard things that he was up against. And some of his naiveties in that because of his good heart, because he wanted to believe in the best in people. He was putting his best foot forward, but he was at the same time enabling people, enabling the mother of his children, and not really understanding that. He felt like he needed to support his children. And she would take his money and say it was for this or that. And then she would go buy drugs and do drugs. And, I won't go much into that because it's not necessarily my testimony to share where that's all concerned. But at the end of the day, God asked me to step in and help him because I've been through a turbulent family in myself. And I helped him understand, hey, don't give her money. If she's saying it's for groceries, go buy groceries. If she's saying that the kids need clothes, you go shopping for the kids and get them clothes. If it's for a doctor's appointment, you call that doctor where the appointment is set up and you pay it ahead of time so they can just go in for the appointment, right? So if she's like really having these problems, you don't want to enable her because she doesn't want to get a job and she doesn't actually want to provide for her kids. So you need not enable her, but just be the father that you're supposed to be and provide for your kids. And so God asked me to sit next to him and kind of show him what that looked like. And so, there was one weekend where I got to babysit his kids because he finally got a weekend with them, but then was asked to work. And so he was about to take them back. And I was like, no, I'll babysit for them so that you can sleep with them at the end of the day, right? Because I knew after what my father had been through, and I know after what I'd been through in life with my own family. Sorry, I'm getting kind of emotional because it's a big part of my story. I knew that he deserved that after everything that he'd been trying and all of the warfare and the things that were up against him. All he needed in that moment to keep going was to be able to sleep with his kids that night in his bed, So I went to Dollar General and I spent, a good part of my paycheck, but it didn't really matter to me. God just asked me to do this. So I went to Dollar General. I got, the twin girls, some sippy cups, and I got the son, like a straw cup, and I got snacks and stuff to make for lunch, and we had a good time. And I babysat for a couple days for him, and he, just being able to see him come home and fall asleep in his bed and his kids just wrapped up around him in his bed, all three of them, it made me so happy as a believer because of the things I went through as a child. Nothing made me happier than to be able to be a person for him in that moment. And if God wanted me to do that and wanted me to be that person and that conduit for him, there was no bigger honor that I could have in my eyes because of the things that, again, I've walked through in life. And so I found it a blessing and an honor to be able to help this man. Not knowing that he would end up being my best friend and one day my partner and the person that God has called me to be with. I had no clue. My heart was just set on helping this man get his kids back because I saw that he deserved it. I saw that he was doing everything that you're supposed to and his heart was in the right place. I saw that he wanted to help other people at the same time. I saw him work really hard because I worked with him. I saw him work really hard and he was a very positive person. And so over time, like I said, we became partners and we did live together. It was before I really came back into relationship with Christ. I was a believer. I was a spiritual person, but I was still being led astray in some ways in my own spiritual life, and it definitely spilled over into our situation. He is supportive, and he's a dreamer, and him just loving me as I was, that created room for me to explore myself more. And so in this time, it's been crazy in the last, 4 years or so. It's been incredible to be with somebody who sees who God made me to be, and not only sees that and still loves me, but sees the challenges that I'm up against and the big thing I'm up against, and he sees my ambition and he sees that I can do it and he supports me in it, and he loves those parts about me, and God has exactly done what he asked me to do. He's made me a conduit in his life, for God to be known, for God to be shown, and for God's glory to be given. And so now becoming a stepmom and building a family with this man and a purpose has been something that has really been such a privilege and such an honor, but it is just only one part of my purpose, and I understand that. So him creating that space of allowing me to explore who I was instead of trying to change me allowed me to start asking some real questions to God about my purpose, right? So it really kind of all came to a head in 2023. I had been asking God for questions. I had been searching. But unfortunately, there was a point where all things came to a head. I was freaking out so much in my life because of what was going on around us that I had succumbed to looking at tarot videos and to the new age side of things while still believing that God could be a conduit for those things. And I was sorely mistaken, and I was definitely corrected by Father for all of that. But in the meantime, like, our reality that we had created around those understandings was starting to melt down around us. Even though this man was working really hard and trying really hard, he wasn't getting paid for the work he was doing. We were owed $5,000. That didn't happen. And so we were losing our house. Our electric got shut off and our water got shut off before we lost our house. And a church actually paid our bills. That's when I first started praying to God again, like, very seriously about all of this, because it was my children on the line at this point. The children he asked me to care for. It was my partner on the line. It was our future on the line. And I didn't want to fumble the ball more than I already had, and that's a testimony for a different day, something that him and I will probably have to talk about together, or I'd have to, talk to him if he's comfortable about me giving that testimony. But, a church paid our bills and got our water turned back on, and the electric company worked with DHS and got our electric turned back on, right? But understanding that not only did this church pay our water bill, but they paid it for 2 months, and he wasn't supposed to get paid for another month. And so that's what blew my mind. It was just too perfect. It was God, right? So I got on my knees. I was humbled, man. I was humbled by the fact that this church not only paid our debt, but paid it in full and more. And that is the nature of God, and God is good. So as things were stressful, I was still trying to kind of keep myself together, keep the house together, keep it, somewhat normal, even though things seemed to be falling apart. Our relationship was in strain. The kids definitely were having to get creative with, we were having to get creative with our days because they weren't in school yet. And so I was having to teach them, and we were just having to get real creative with how we spent our days. And it was just getting kind of intense, until one night when me and my partner had kind of a little bit of a disagreement, and I decided to sleep on the couch, because he was just kind of thrashing in the bed. And at the time, I didn't know about, casting out demons. I didn't know about deliverance. I didn't know about prayer and all of how powerful all of that was. And this is early 2023. Okay, like, I had heard these things growing up in and out of churches. I did not understand the magnitude and the depth of these things. Okay, so that night I was sitting on the couch and I was praying, and I clicked on this video called, I can't remember what it was called, but it was on the subject of purpose. And I want to give a shout out right now. It was Tim Ross, The Basement podcast with Charles Metcalf, and it was one of the early episodes, and they were talking about purpose and like how purpose works with God and how God is so great for giving us all a purpose. And it was just really inspiring. The only reason why I clicked on this video is because Charles Metcalf has the same last name as my grandma's maiden name, and so I was very interested. And so I started watching this, and that's a little, web in itself. But I did not realize that Tim Ross, started this podcast, and that, yes, he was in Texas, but his mentees, because he's a mentor, his mentees actually were pastors in a church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was in Oklahoma City. So I thought that was crazy the more I found out about this, and the more the kind of synchronicities lined up. But in that moment, I was sitting on the couch and I was watching this video about purpose, and I had God. I don't want to kind of like get ahead of myself, because this is something that he wants me to keep between him and I for now while I work on it. But he said, he whispered a few words to me, just 3 words. And I said, "Is that you, God?" Like, in my living room, I thought I was going crazy, right? It wasn't audible, like physically audible, but it was mentally audible in a way that was different, because I was very used to fighting thoughts. I was very used to fighting paranoid thoughts and having voices in my head that were outside of what I would actually think for myself or wish for myself, right? It wasn't necessarily like I was hearing other voices, but I was just hearing my own voice, or, like just the spirits pressing on me, saying, certain things, trying to say that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't going to be, usable for God, and that I was just washed up and used, right? And so in that moment, God spoke to me. He spoke to me the words of my purpose, okay? And I won't say it now because I really want it to be that much of a surprise, but he said the blank blank, and I said, "What?" And then he made a reference to Joe Dirt. He said, "Joe Dirt it." And I laughed out loud, because only God would know how many times I watched that movie growing up. You're like late 90s babies where, yeah, you had the experience of DVD players, but that wasn't before you had a chuck of VCR in that, a tape in that VCR. You know what I mean? Like, there's, all of us have had that experience with the little VCR. And one of the VCR tapes that we had that was a regular movie was definitely Joe Dirt, and we had it on DVD, and we had Big Daddy and Forrest Gump. Those were like the 3 movies that I like to fixate on and watch when I was younger, because again, I was a kid that grew up in a trailer, okay? So he made the reference, and he was like, "Joe Dirt it," and I laughed so loud in my living room. I did not want to wake anybody up, so I like clamped my mouth, but I was laughing, and I did not realize that I was having a Samuel moment in that moment. I did not realize that God was speaking purpose into me, okay? I had no clue. But he had given me this great idea, and had given me finally something to channel all of my pain into something that could be beneficial for other people. But it was also, on the other side of things, terrifying, okay? I cannot tell you guys how absolutely terrifying it was to understand what he was asking me to do. And that's how I knew it was a God purpose, okay? God's not going to give you anything you can do on your own. God's not going to give you a purpose. He's not going to give you a journey that goes outside of needing a relationship with him or needing his strength. And so I knew that I was going to need his strength. So I had also had the gift of dreams, and around that time I had asked for my dreams back, because when I was younger, I was having some really painful dreams, and they were happening. My father was diagnosed with CML when I was, what was it? It was shortly after I turned 13. So it was like I was 14, or just like newly 14. Got my driver's license, got braces, and the same day I found out my dad had cancer, and blood cancer at that. And so about a month before that, for like the whole month or so, or a couple weeks before his diagnosis, I was actually having dreams about him. I was having dreams that he would be hurt. I was having dreams that he would get a fish hook stuck in his hand. I was having dreams that he'd get killed, or he'd fall out of a boat, or get electrocuted. I was just having these dreams, and they were terrifying, okay? I was a young kid having these dreams about my father, my Superman, the one that has saved me since I was a baby, in my eyes. It was terrifying. And so I actually at that point had understanding about prayer and about God, and about how dreams can be connected to God even then. And so I prayed for him to take away my dreams. And so as an adult, he's only ever really had my dreams press through when he absolutely needed to tell me something or warn me of something through my adulthood, but it wasn't like on a regular basis that I dreamt anymore. And he would just try to warn me about certain things that were happening, and so I would have dreams for like a month or so, and then like they would cut off again. So at this point, I after he, you know, spoke that word over me that night, I prayed for my dreams to come back, because I wanted to be able to properly protect my children. I wanted to properly protect my family, and I wanted to be able to redeem us, because at a certain point, I was in a Walmart parking lot crying my eyes out to God, saying, God, you got me in this position with these kids. I prayed about it before, you know, we got into this situation. You gave me everything that I've ever wanted. I dropped the ball. I'll admit it. And it's such a mess now that it's completely out of my control. But you know how much we love each other. And you know how much we want a good life for these kids. And I just broke down and said, God, take it. I don't know if you want me to leave. I don't know if I'm taking somebody else's place that should be here. I don't know, but I need you to save my family. I need you to save us, because I can't do anything. And Patrick sorry, I just said his name. My partner didn't know he didn't know what to do. He was working, he was doing everything he was, you know, quote unquote supposed to do, but it kept blowing up in his face, and there was just all these things, all of these stops that God kept putting in front of our lives. But I didn't realize it was because I'd stopped relying on him. I had stopped looking to God for my needs in life, and so did my partner, to the point where we had been led astray in some areas, and God was trying to kind of put a stop to things until we could, you know, so that we could be basically humbled. He was like, I've given you everything, you messed it up, now I have to take everything, even in order to restore it. So when you restore something, you have to take it apart, clean the parts, repaint, repolish, whatever you need to do, and put it back together. So that's kind of like what he's been doing in this time. So that's early 2023. My dreams returned, but we did lose the house. After that, we stayed with some friends, and some more things occurred, and I was separated from the situation. And now this is really painful for me. I was a stay-at-home mom for almost 3 years. I was at home every single day with my kids. I was homeschooling them because they were not ready for school when I got them. Their mom had neglected them to the point where they were almost hedonistic. They were like just but they didn't understand. They didn't know better, you know, because their mom just didn't pay attention to them. She just neglected them because of drugs. She loved them very much, and she recognized that. She's had her own problems, and I pray for her every day, even still, because I want their mom to be part of their life. You know, I don't want to just come in here and take her spot and be like, well, then I'll raise them if you're not going to. Or like, no, I want her to reach a point of, you know, purpose and happiness and fulfillment as well with God. So, you know, I do still pray for her. But the separation did happen, because I prayed. I said, God, you know, again, if we need to separate so we can figure this out, so I can figure this out with you, so we can get a clear head. If people will help him more, if he's alone with the kids, then so be it, you know. And so, yeah, God did call me into separation. And so I had a good friend of mine who I had once dated at one point, but he was also a believer. He came and picked me up in an emergency, and I stayed with him for a couple months, but I couldn't stay there any longer, so I needed to move on. But during the time that I was there, I was, you know, doing some soul searching, some spirit searching, and some renewing of faith and my identity with Christ, because obviously I had this separation now. As much as like I woke up for the first 2 weeks bawling my eyes out because I couldn't make my kids breakfast. I knew that they weren't getting as nutritional of food because I wasn't cooking for them, because people don't look out for them like I look out for them. And so it was killing me, man. You know, it was the first, after, you know, the first couple weeks and spending my birthday a week later alone. It was really rough and it really hurt. So I did a lot of searching, a lot of cleansing. God started kind of ripping things from me that didn't need to be there. And I decided to finally get baptized. Now, I asked God into my heart. I asked Jesus into my heart when I was younger than 13. So I was between 10 and 12, 11, somewhere in there. And my brother told me about Jesus, and that's when I asked Jesus to come into my heart, because I had such a turbulent childhood. I just wanted a friend. I just wanted somebody to be there, you know? And so that's when I ultimately asked Jesus to come into my heart and save me. But it wasn't until years and years and years later, I'm 26 now, you know, I'm about to be 27, that, you know, I was finally able to be like, okay, I'm ready to, you know, do that. I'm ready to marry you. I'm ready to propose to you. You know, it's like, because that's the way I look at it, is if God is asking you to pick up your cross and be a true disciple of him, then there's a lot of things that you're going to have to do and sacrifice that are worldly in order to truly do that in its core. And so I knew better when I was younger than to make that dedication if I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to make that dedication and then, you know, go astray and not understand. I knew that I didn't understand things well enough about the world and about spirit and about God and all these things in the research that I've done with it. I didn't know enough. And I had a feeling I was going to be a little bit of a wild child and let loose after I turned 18. So I didn't make that commitment to him. And so finally last year, I decided to make that commitment to him. And so around that time, you know, again, more soul searching, spirit searching. He took me on a lot of journeys. He likes to take me into nature and kind of speak to me in that way. And he uses things that happen in nature to create metaphors for me, like my first video with the spider web, for instance. But after I gave my life to him, I had no clue how much the warfare would ensue, okay? Because as God is laying down finally clearly what my purpose is, what my weaknesses are, he's doing all of this soul searching inside of me, I'm getting this warfare. I had no clue about the attacks of Satan. I had no clue about the vendetta of Satan and how terrible it can be. I had no clue to the depths of which these things could go, but it was hitting me full on. I was literally, guys, after everything that I've been through in life, I was feeling like straitjacket crazy. Like, I'm not messing with you. Like, I've actually checked myself into a mental hospital a few times as an adult. And I had really bad time where my, you know, the way that I used to explain it was, before I understood about spirits and things, I used to say my brain was trying to eat itself. And it was trying to kill me. And it was basically just taking everything that I had ever been through and the truth of that and turning it into a negative thing, turning it into a thing that made me hopeless and made me feel like I was worthless. And so I was, again, going through that warfare. And as I'm having all of these promises, you know, given to me and how grateful I am for that, like, at the same very time, I'm having Satan just come in. Like, I watched Diani News. She's, I'm sorry if I pronounced her name wrong, but she's a prophetess on YouTube, and she's somebody that God has had me follow through some of my journey. And she was talking about this not too long ago. But she was saying, like, you know, as God was talking in one ear, Satan was, you know, going right in the other ear and messing with me. And like, that's exactly what was happening. But it was because God wanted me to be able to hear his voice and stand on what he had for me and be confident in that and not feel crazy for, you know, hearing spirits and dreaming and having a relationship and a direct connection with the Holy Spirit. He wanted me to be not afraid of that. So basically, God was encouraging me through my promises. So he laid some promises on me, helped me renew my faith, helped me read the Bible and start understanding him and the true understanding of Jesus and why Jesus came here. I started reading the gospel again and doing more research in the Old Testament as far as, you know, just inspiring stories of where I was at and what that meant for me. And that was the first time ever that I read the Bible and started getting revelation with the scriptures. And I just thought that was really incredible. And so I was getting used to these things and fighting the warfare. And that's when he kind of told me to do this. That's when he told me to do this YouTube. That was one of the few things that he told me to do. There's kind of some main things that will be but will take a while to develop, but this was part of the purpose he wanted me to do. And so at first I thought he wanted me to do what he called, like, early in the year when he sat on the couch and said that and gave me something to do. I thought it was that first. And so I was wrestling with how I felt about it. I was wrestling with how I was going to do it. And it just seemed insurmountable to me. And so he gave YouTube to me as a way, or as a conduit, to not only bring people to him and teach, because my name is Tanya, which means it has been taught in Hebrew. He wanted me to come and teach on this YouTube in a way that he finds admiring. And it's kind of like in line with almost how like Sunray, if any of you guys know who Sunray is, it's very similar to in the which way she teaches is the way that he wants me to come about, but just in a different way. Obviously, because I'm a different person, he wants me to deliver it in a different way. It might even be on different subjects. So anyway, he said, you get more comfortable with the YouTube and you'll be able to walk into this other thing more boldly and with more of a professional backing. And I was like, okay, so again, if you go back to my early notes with the purpose, right, you do that early experience and then you start to be able to apply that experience. And so even though I've done that in the medical field, I've done that in other fields, this is something that's new to me. And so YouTube is a very good way to not only work and walk in purpose with him and my promises, but to also give me the ability to understand and be bold in the other thing he asked me to do. So after that, he also gave me the promise of marriage. He gave me the promise of a few other things. He had me write it down so that I could always stand on it and pray on it, right? And my weaknesses and my strengths, so I can work on my weaknesses. Well, he had me write all this down because during my wilderness season came right after that. I moved in with some friends that I had for 6+ years, and we had all done a lot of soul searching together. We were little hippies around a fire when I was like in my early 20s, doing little hippie things, if you catch my drift. And, it was very eye-opening for me at the time. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot with these people, and they became my family. They at one point treated me better and accepted me more than my own family did. Well, I was in this place, and I realized that I had attracted these people at a different phase of my life. That I was no longer a person, and this is me not condemning anybody or judging anybody, but I was just not in the same belief place that they were. I was not willing to make detrimental jokes. I was not willing to continue in with my crude humor. There was just a lot of like mirrors that God held up to me through these people in the ways of which myself, I was not in a godly standing. And I was leaning on people that were also not godly, but he used them as a conduit to help me understand more about myself, understand more about forbearance and grace, help me with my temperament, because when I am disrespected, or somebody that I know is just blatantly disrespected, like it's one thing if somebody does something on accident or says something and they don't mean to offend you, but it offends you, but when somebody comes to you and knows that like something's not right, and they come to you and they disrespect you, call you outside your name because of their feelings or because they don't want to take accountability or whatever, what have you, that stuff gets under my skin, okay? Because I'm the kind of person where it's like, I can work with your mistakes. There's actually not much that frustrates me other than deliberate disrespect. And so when that was happening and I was being accused of things that I would never, ever, ever do, I started to understand that God was shedding things. He was shedding branches from me. He was shedding hesitations, limiting mindsets. He was doing character development. He was teaching me when and how to speak. He was teaching me to discern who was for me, who wasn't for me, how to keep, because I have what the world calls Asperger's, high functioning Asperger's. So it's just basically you have Asperger's, but you're really good at hiding it. Okay. So I have high functioning Asperger's, and, he was basically kind of shaping me, due to these limiting mindsets and this character development that he needed me to have in this season. He put me through this wilderness and through this character development so that I could face some of the things that I struggled with socially. I've not always known where to speak and where not to speak. I've not always known that, if I was to speak, what was too much and what was not too much. Because I'm just by nature, a very because of my, because of the way my brain is wired, autistic people tend to be very honest and blunt people. Okay. And so I was very, always transparent, very vulnerable, always telling people too much information about myself, always having it used against me, even though I was putting good grace and faith in these people. God was trying to teach me how to properly, basically, like, I told him I wanted to be a chameleon. If he was going to call me to speak in front of people, and he was going to call me to speak in a big way, then I wanted to be able to walk into any room and understand their language. And by language, I don't mean like Spanish to English. I mean like hood to walking into a country club and sitting with some, elites. Like, I wanted to be able to walk into one room and be able to have a intellectual conversation with an accomplished person. And I also wanted to be able to be on the street and talk to a homeless person and give them space and help them feel understood and related to. So that was, because that was something that I wanted, it's something that was a goal of mine. He was teaching me how to do that and how to stay safe in that and how to keep my faith safe in that. And so he started opening my eyes to the doubt and to the overthinking and the worry that I held on to as well. So there was just a lot of shedding. It's a lot of shedding. I had to let my family go, my biological family, for this current time, because they don't understand what God's doing in my life. And I'm sure lots of other people who have stepped out on faith can relate. But my family pretty much thinks I'm crazy. A lot of them wouldn't even necessarily say it, but a lot of them know that I'm very ambitious and I got a lot of gall, okay? And that's just the way I was raised. But now as an adult, it's surprising them. It's surprising them that I'm headstrong and that I have ambition in this way and that I'm different. But I've always been different. I've always never fit a mold. I've always been a little bit of a weird kid, and that's okay. I've always actually been okay with that, because I was an only child at my dad's house until I was 13, and at my mom's house I was one of 5. And I was always that kind of back and forth kid, kind of out of place. I moved around a lot. When I would make friends, they would just be ripped away from me. Then I'd make other friends and move to a small town. It was just a whole lot, And so through my life, I had learned like these coping mechanisms to keep myself strong and, worrying. And if I could out worry the situation, or I could out think the situation logically, then it would make sense to me and, things were better. But, at the end of the day, that's not how things are. But, during that time, it did teach me that I was different, and it taught me in a way where I was comfortable with that. And one of the things that cued me into that as a kid was I loved music, right? And I did not listen to the same music as kids around me. I wasn't listening to pop and the radio and the top 40 and country and things. I was listening to like my dad's music. I was listening to classic rock. I was listening to like Eric Clapton, Bad Company. Like, I was going down the list. My dad used to call me Peace Train, like by Cat Stevens. So I was just really into like that 60s, 70s music. I even went through an 80s phase, and then like my early 20s, I went through a 90s phase where I just only really listened to like grunge music and 90s music. And it just, as much as I was kind of obsessed with music and always had it playing and not realizing that that was a special interest, it's something that made me different than the people around me. It was very obvious that I was different than them. I played music. Most people played sports. I was really good at my academics, and other people were not as great with their academics or as fast with their academics. And, I would start to wear things like I would try to, I would tie a pair of, like, I'd cut the cord of my headphones after they'd break, because early headphones were pretty cheap and crappy. So I would cut the cord off of them. I would cut it at the V, and I would use it as like a headband if it was a cute color. So like the aux cord was like, it was tied in a bow and the aux cord was sticking out, right? Like, and I would make headphones out of like, or I would make a necklace out of the actual headphone part. I would take the speakers out and I would tie the wires together and put the little earbuds together on my neck, because I just loved music. And so I was always up about upcycling. I was a little hippie too. So I was a nerd, I was a weirdo, and I was doing that in a time where it was not cool. Okay. I was doing this like back in like 2008, 2013, 14, like, and it started to cue me in when I started to see like the things that I was interested in, people would make fun of me for, then 2 years later would become a fad. Like I would wear colored skinny jeans and my parents made fun of me for it. And then all of a sudden girls are like walking everywhere wearing mint colored skinny jeans and gray skinny jeans, and colored skinny jeans were the fad for a minute, right? And I just started laughing because it kind of made me feel more confident to be myself at that point, because I felt like in my own little head when I was little, I know it's silly, but I felt like I was a little trendsetter. So I was always just okay with being set apart. And God, like really in that like wilderness period and that shedding period really helped me become comfortable with that once again, being different and being bold in that though this time, and not being afraid of the very things that God made me to be, right? So that was a big thing. And so I was wrestling with my purpose. I was wrestling with my character development. I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I not going to hurt people in this? How am I going to not communicate pain in this situation? I want to, show your glory in it all. I don't want to communicate it in a way where it perpetuates privilege or oppression or these kinds of things. I want to communicate it in a way that is conducive for your glory. And so I was just really struggling to find a way, and I couldn't understand why he wasn't giving me, clear instructions about these things or about my marriage, about what was happening. And I was just getting frustrated, but I just didn't realize at that time that how much he was actually pruning, how much he was just wanting me to pay attention to what was going on around me, so I didn't repeat this when it came time to receive the promise and receive the blessing. So I was wrestling with it, and I was gaining new experience in the places that I was working, and I was actually helping one of my friends come back to Christ. Her daughter, is a fan of God and a fan of Jesus, and which is awesome. And I started praying for her. She lost her best friend while I was there, and so she started to really lean on me pretty hard, and I started praying for her, and I started interceding for her, and I started seeing differences happen. And so when I was there, one particular night, or one particular morning, I woke up like way early in the morning. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, right? I looked at my phone. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. I was like, oh, okay, I can go back to sleep, right? Right? Shut my eyes. But instead, I hear my name. I hear Tanya. Just like that, like audibly. Not in my mind, not that nudge from the Holy Spirit. No, I heard Tanya. Okay? When I say that I shot up in my bed as fast as I could shoot up in my bed, I shot up in my bed. My eyes were wide open. And I was like, what was that? I thought it was one of the guys in the house calling my name. So I got up out of bed. My buddy is on the couch sleeping, and my other buddy's still in his bedroom sleeping. I look at everywhere. There's nobody in that house. Later on, God really kind of came back and helped me understand that as he called Samuel to be under Eli and basically take Eli's place, he was calling me in that moment, whether it was an angel, because I had actually been praying for encounters. I had been praying for those things, so that I could understand him better and understand my dreams better and understand my gifts better. I wanted to, develop my spiritual gifts. And so if you want a reference for that, 1 Samuel 3, 2 through 14 is the scripture reference I'm talking about. When God called Samuel, he called him 4 times, and he went to Eli saying, yes, Rabbi, yes, Father, I'm here. And he said, I didn't call you, go back to bed. And eventually he's like, that's God calling you. Listen to God, like say, yes, your servant is here and my ears are open. And so basically, like, I didn't realize till later, like he was showing his might in my life, and it was a Samuel moment. Okay. So time goes on in this house, and I'm like having a hard time juggling my partner, trying to hold on to that like shred of a string that we still had as far as a relationship. I rarely got to talk to the kids in all of this time. Like, it was really just a lot of pain, so much pain, and I can't even explain it to you. But if I had not had God in my life, and I had not asked Jesus back into my life, and I had not been baptized by the Holy Spirit, this experience probably would have done me in. And I'm not being dark when I say that. I'm just being honest at God's grace and in his glory and his strength that works through our life. Because at the end of the day, I would have not made it through this experience and found courage like I did if it was not for God. I would have given up on my man. I would have given up on the kids. It would have been too hard for me. I would have given it back to God and prayed for a better person to come into their life. I just would have gave up. But at the end of the day, his strength, came into me and helped me have understanding in moments that seemed so chaotic and to not have understanding. I had friends that I had had for a long time coming at me, accusing me of stuff, looking at me in a way that was very wrong, not the way that I was, like, I was honestly who I was. And because of the way that I follow God, people looked at it as one way when it was a different way. Just like if you're working for God and he tells you not to have a job and you're working for him, but the people you're staying with want you to get a job, it's so hard to explain to them. Like, you almost just look for jobs to appease them, right? You just start looking and filling out job applications to appease them so they feel more comfortable in a worldly sense. But that the way that God's providing is through his purpose. And the reason why he doesn't want you to work is because he wants you to rely on him and he wants to have that glory. So at the end of the day, it took me a while to make it through this pain. It was a very painful process. But it definitely, if God does come to you and does give you a clear picture of your purpose and what it will be and what you will be used for, even on a basic level, and and you really want to embrace that, there's going to be a certain level of character development. There's going to be a certain wilderness period that you will go through to understand how to get on the other side of this thing and how to actually channel everything that you are and just be that person that called you to be and walking in that purpose. It's going to take a while. Being in a relationship with him, character development, wrestling with that purpose, your hesitations with that purpose. You have to find a way to break free of all of that. You have to find a way to rely on God for your daily bread. Right? So it took me a while to finally, he gave me some instruction after, in January sometime after a fast, he gave me some instruction, 2024 January now. And so this is early 2023, February 2023, and now it is February 2024, and we're still on this journey, okay? So again, this is after years of having experience in the world and having experience with my strengths and my weaknesses, and now having an actual accumulated place to put that. So if I can compare that to the garden thing, it would be I've spent already years having my own little garden and feeding people from that garden. But now I'm in a place where I can, start that community garden. Obviously, I'm not in a place where that's become known and it can be a national thing, but I'm in a place where I'm starting this big idea of a big community garden, right? So I'm stepping out on that faith, but it's going to take a lot of things that I don't understand, don't know, and will need help with. And I will need God for. And so he gives me the instructions, and part of these instructions is to leave where I was at and to move to the town of which my partner and the kids live, because he was telling me that it was around time for us to start reconciliation and restoration. Because the restoration part of things, he had already taken things apart. He had been polishing things up, repainting them and everything, and now he's getting ready to put the item back together, right? Restoration. And so he also wanted me to be a conduit for my partner's faith and to help him come, to know God in more of an intimate place through my own testimony. And so he told me to leave with what I had left, which was $300 in my bank account. I had saved it from my last paycheck. And I had waited to have God tell me where to spend it, where to put it. I thought I was going to live in a van for a while. I thought, all these things, but I gave it to him ultimately. He told me to move into a hotel and to trust him. And I was like, okay. And so I was actually having a hard time doing that. I didn't do it at first, but I told myself if another thing popped off in that house, another situation, or, what was the other thing? If something else popped off or I got a job lead back in that town, in the town where he's at, then I would move. Again, leaning on my human understanding and want for safety instead of Father. And so that's something that I had to repent of and apologize for and come clean for and realize, and tell him that I wasn't as brave as I wanted to be. But once an argument did pop off, I decided to leave. And I left. And after I left, the girl that I had tried to bring back to Christ, she called me and testifying about how her situation, like literally she found out within a week she was getting a car, she was getting a lawyer to get her son back, and she got a job and all these things all in 1 week. Okay? And that's just absolutely incredible. All of her doctor visits and stuff were doing really well. She was not having to be on medication like she had been. And it was just really good to see, like, I had been praying for all of these things for her. And she called me and told me and testified and told me thank you for praying for her. And, you know, that she would like to help me along the way if she can, because I've helped her, and that God is good, and that she does believe that God is good. And it just warmed my heart, man, once I finally made that leap of faith, and a basically an angel, a destiny helper that God put in my life, drove me 6 hours with my dog and my cat to a hotel room, not knowing if they were going to waive the pet fee, not knowing if I was going to have money for 3 nights or 4 nights. But I knew that I didn't have, like, I was literally fully at God's mercy. No food, no way to make money, none of this. I just had my partner in town with his parents, but they're already helping him, and my kids are already living there, so I can't really ask anything from them other than food, right? Because they have a food card. So, once I finally got here, though, the amount of freedom, the amount of freedom that I felt, and the amount of courage that I felt to start all of this, was just growing and growing and growing and growing. So I was excited. It's like on one hand, it took everything in me to make that leap of faith, but I finally did. And now that I got to the hotel. They gave me a whole week for the price of a few days, and they waived the pet fee. Like, knowing that of my situation, they like waived the pet fee and everything. Like, God's grace held, like, just loomed over me. I've been singing 12-12, which means under his wing. Like, I'm under his protection right now. And like, it was just insurmountable to me that, like, not only that, but then I got a refund for a car auction membership that I had done. And so there was money there for me to eat food until my partner was able to come, you know, kind of load me up on some food in my refrigerator. And so I was able to eat. I was able to have something to walk around town and look for a job and fill out applications, because that was something that he said was acceptable in the instructions, as well as working on these YouTube videos. So I started, you know, walking around and, you know, looking for jobs. And the man who drove me here 6 hours, basically is just an older man who's incredible, has traveled a lot. He adopted me as his godly daughter, and he gave me some money as well to make sure that I had some food in my belly when I got here. He insisted that I didn't pay him for gas, even though I tried. And it was just incredible. I was able to buy food for my animals and a litter box for my cat. And, you know, those two I prayed for. I prayed for my dog in 2020, and he gave me her 3 months later when I was homeless. I prayed for a cat because I had lost my cat due to the situation where I got kicked away from my partner. Those people let my cat and her kittens out of their garage. So instead of being angry, I just, you know, gave it to God and just gave him my pain and how much that hurt my feelings, and that, you know, if it was him willing, that I would love the opportunity to care for another little kitten. And literally the same day that I prayed that, I found one in the middle of the road walking my way home, which is, I posted another testimony. It's in my YouTube videos. I only have 3 now, including this one, and it's a testimony about that. So basically, I knew that he would never make me pick between 2 promises. Like, if it came down to my animals and me being able to move forward, he wouldn't, like, I asked for those blessings. He gave me that. He gave me my promise with them, and they're my companions, you know, because when I'm not with the kids and I'm not with my partner, I'm alone. And in the past, that wasn't always a good thing for me mentally. And my animals have been very grounding for me, and remind me of God's goodness and God's grace, and proof of that. And so, you know, I was just really worried about them, and I was worried about them being able to be in the hotel room and everything, and here we are. So basically, it's been a very long journey of, you know, looking at my gifts surrendering them to God, surrendering my family to God, my whole life to God, because I had no other choice. Then he took me on a journey of renewing my faith, getting me baptized in the Holy Spirit, which was just a whole crazy experience in itself. And then he took me through a wilderness phase. And then he took me through, character development. And now I'm in a place where I can start applying these things. He's giving me clear instruction to continue. So as long as you always lean on him and you walk that walk with him, you will be learning your purpose. Again, purpose is a journey, a walk, not a destination. And so, it's taken me a lot of years of different experiences and things that I've done and environments that I've been in and parts of the world that I've seen, different communities that I've seen and been a part of, good and bad. It's taken me many, many years of all of these things to be able to be a speaker and be on this YouTube for you guys and to be able to speak in a way that is conducive for everybody. And to turn my story into something that can be beneficial for the world, because that's all I've ever wanted. And it sounds really cheesy, but I'll be really honest. Since I was a kid, like, you can ask anybody that I was in middle school with, you can ask anybody that I went to school with. I wanted to save the world. I wanted to start recycling companies. I wanted to lower emissions. I was going Greta Thunberg on all this, okay? I was going Greta Thunberg on this ish, all right? And so I've just always had that want to have a helping heart. But it's been really difficult for me, considering my Asperger's, because though I've always felt like I wanted to be helpful and I was helpful, there is some times where I was a little odd for people. I didn't show the proper emotional reactions to certain things. I didn't understand things sometimes in the way that the depth of which people said them. There's just, a lot of things that I struggled with that, and needed time to be able to foster it into something that could actually be a superpower, a gift to my life instead of a hindrance, or something that made my brain, go into a hypermania state constantly. So there's a lot of things within you that have to be fostered in order for the physical to come about and for it to be put into something that can be in God's glory. And you don't really, I didn't ask to, yes, I asked him to give me purpose and to help me channel these things into one thing, but I didn't ask for how big this thing is going to be. God already promised me where this is going to go if I stay in his glory and I stay in my walk with him. He already told me in my promise where this is going. And so at the end of the day, I have to continue that walk, to continue to touch the people that God has under me to touch. And I have to continue to, gain experience, for instance, with this YouTube, so that I can do the next thing. And so, again, purpose is not linear. What you're doing in your purpose and who you are as a person, sometimes that just means discovering things about you. If you don't know what your gifts are, try a bunch of new things. Try taking pictures if you've never taken pictures. Go get a disposable camera. See if you're good at taking some shots. If you have never worked out a day in your life, go try to work out. See if you're a coordinated person who's good at sports, that can maybe, teach younger kids how to do sports. If you're good with art, but you've never tried clay before, go try to sculpt with some clay. If you're a sculptor and you've never tried any other, media, grab a can of spray paint and an empty wall somewhere, or a skate park that already has some graffiti, and go to town, man. At the end of the day, this is a walk. This is a discovery of self. This is not even the self that the earth gives you. It's more rather like for instance, Jimi Hendrix was always Jimi Hendrix to God. It already happened, it already passed. He was always Jimi Hendrix to God, right? But Jimi Hendrix wasn't always Jimi Hendrix to Jimi Hendrix. He had to meet himself every day until he became that, right? And so when after I was given that revelation sitting on my couch by myself in the middle of the night, and finding it kind of comical, at the same time, God had told me at that time that I was going to start meeting myself as who he made me to be. I was getting ready to meet myself in the mirror as the very woman that God made me to be. There was no more looking in the mirror, feeling out of touch with my physical body, of feeling like an alien inside of a vessel. Like there was no more, who am I? What does this all mean? And why am I existing? Like there was no more existentialism and nihilism that was flowing in me. Instead of it, it was discovery. It was uncovering little boxes and things that I had hid away to appease other people to be socially acceptable. It was uncovering those things, taking out old things. And until now, where I'm starting to resemble the woman of which God made me to be. I'm meeting her in the mirror every day, and I finally have like an understanding of who that is, and I can communicate with her, you know, and God gives me the sound mind to do it. And so again, just ask yourself, you know, what are my gifts? How can I place them in God's hands so that I know how he intended them to serve? You know, and just kind of sit and try to have that relationship. Again, I'm going to have that website up and coming, and I will have notes on this. I will go through my journals that I filled up in this time, and I will find the important things that I personally feel and that God has placed in my heart to write down. I will make like a reflection sheet for you guys that will help you meet yourself as the person that God made you to be. It will help you ask yourself the important questions that you need to ask in order to be in line with who he wants you to be spiritually, and to have an actual relationship with him, so that you don't succumb to religious pressure, so that you don't succumb to worldly pressure and this teaching and that teaching and be misdirected in this way and that way. He wants you to stand firmly on who you are and the promise that he gave you and the purpose that he gave you. So I eventually will make a reflection sheet and a note sheet for this video with the website. So again, it might take me like a couple weeks to get this website up, but once I do, I promise, and I will let you guys know when the notes are up for this one. But you know, as far as this YouTube goes and the purpose of it, I'll be sharing some stories about my life and testimonies and God's involvement in that. So maybe you guys can start to understand maybe how God works in people's lives, now, this day, 2024. And how to be able to see that in your own life. I'll be teaching and breaking down some of the Bible, and teaching about the parables and the meanings under the parables, and reading the Bible in a way that, you know, makes it come alive, that makes it, you know, the actual living text, instead of just reading stories and breaking them down and looking up definitions. We'll do some teachings, but I will show you how Holy Spirit can provide revelation with these things. And I will be more teaching on the concepts of like awareness and peace and grace and forbearance. Like I might even do a series on the fruits of the Spirit and how that really looks, and how that looks to enact that in your life, you know, and how to see that in other people's lives. I will probably end up covering a video on substances, because that's something that not a lot of Christians like to cover, because it is something that, you know, you speak the wrong thing and it can create a separation between you and God, or you can lead somebody astray with these things very easily. But at the end of the day, I would like to cover that, because I am a person who has, you know, and I'll admit it now, you know, this is me admitting it to you all. I have done many drugs in my life, and I have been delivered from that. But I've been in environments where that's, you know, big. I've been in the streets. And so like, I understand. I've been in rooms with people where it brought me this understanding of why you do these drugs. And I got pulled into each one and was put into this mindset of where it leads you and how fast that can happen. And, you know, the difference between pharmaceutical drugs and natural healing and all of these things, that will be in its own video. So that's another thing we'll be teaching about. And on top of that, I'll begin again putting some testimonies up of my life, other people's lives. If I have found, somebody who's substantial, who has influenced me, I will always mention them. Like I mentioned Mr. Tim Ross in this episode. If you ever hear this, Tim, it is because of you and Charles that I even have the courage to make this video. It is because of you and Charles that I even, and mainly because of you, Tim, your unwavering obedience to Father is so inspiring. When you quit your job as a preacher and you started this podcast, not knowing how much money you put into that, and investors and everybody was behind you because God said so. And I find that so inspiring. The way that you teach is so relatable to the way my brain works, and the way that I look at faith, and the way that I look at God. And I thank you, Tim. I thank you, Tim. I thank you, Charles. And shout out to Mr. What's his name? Well, I'm so sorry, honey. I'm so sorry. He's the preacher at Transformation Church. I just get them mixed up sometimes. Oh yeah, Mike Todd. Okay, Mike Todd, Tim Ross, and Charles Metcalf. I'm giving you guys a shout out. As soon as I started listening to you guys, I felt like I'd found a family that I didn't know that I had. And that is the cool part about being the body of Christ. But I feel as though the way that we discuss, the way that our brains work, the way that we address other people and inspire other people and use, examples and like, the way that Mike uses his physical, examples and visuals, and how that can kind of be testy in some people's, brains and their reality, and the way that you guys kind of bend things. I just admire you guys as deconstructionists. I have been called to do the same, and I just find you guys very inspiring, and I thank you for being a good example and for being a good mentor, and giving me the courage to step out in my own purpose. There's no thanks enough, because if it wasn't for you guys, I probably wouldn't have actually continued this whole thing. I probably wouldn't have made it through, not only with God's grace and Jesus, but like he really used you guys to help me along this journey. And I just want to give you guys a shout out. No matter how much flack and feedback that you guys get, I know that you guys are men of God, and I know that he's working in your guys' lives, and I just find it absolutely incredible. But anyway, that's what this YouTube's gonna cover. Like I said, I will shout out people who have helped me along my journey as I share testimonies and things, because people deserve the credit where it's due. People deserve to, have that light shed on them so that they can also be a conduit for other people, be a lighthouse for others. So again, website, that's what this is gonna be about. This YouTube will be a voiceover channel for now, until I can get a decent camera. Nothing was bothering me more to my core than the crappy camera that came with this laptop, and it was just taking too much space up in my laptop. And so I need to figure out how to get, I need to buy a hard drive and put everything on the hard drive and wipe the computer, or I need to put a micro USB chip. I don't know. I need to figure out the best way to do this. I don't have much guidance, because God wanted me to figure this out with him in my own way, and so I'm going to do that. But once I buy a camera, you guys will see more of my face. But until then, I will just be doing voiceovers to get more comfortable with speaking to you guys, and for the projects that are coming, and helping me develop the skills for that as well. I send you my love. I just want you guys to know that I love you. I don't have to have met you to love you, okay? I love every single thing that God has created because of how beautifully unique and purposefully that God made that thing and put it here. Whether it's you, a dog, a cat, a piece of grass, I don't care. I love you all, okay? I'm sending you my love. You are here for a reason. You are here because God put you here, and because you were beautifully and wonderfully made, and fearfully. That means he was careful when he made you. He wasn't just being like, I'm like, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, oops, a little too much of that. No, he carefully made you for the purpose of which you are walking into and are meeting yourself in now. And I just thank you for being here. I thank you for taking the time to listen to this long one and the testimony that goes with it. But I really hope it helped you in your understanding of purpose and finding your own purpose. Develop your gifts. You guys are all special. You have your own fingerprints, you have your own brain, and the world needs a you. That's why we're here. We need a you, okay? We just need you to quit walking around yourself and covering yourself up to make other people happy. We need you to step out and boldly be you, okay? The world needs a you, just the way that you are. Don't be anything else for anyone else, and lean on God with your gifts, okay? He will give you the strength, he will give you the courage, and he will give you the gall to go and do what he's asked you to do. I promise. So with that, I'm going to hop off here, guys. If for some reason you found any of this confusing, any part of it was rambling, or you have questions, or you want me to reiterate on something, or you have questions, again, feel free to comment down below. I will put my email in my description box so that you guys can get a hold of me. If you need prayers, if you need understanding, if you need support in any way. Again, I can't support anybody financially. I can't support anybody in the ways that the world would probably want to support you. But I can support your heart, honey. I can support your heart, and I can support your happiness, and I can support your your zeal. I can help you get your zeal back when you need it. I can help pray for you when you need it. I can remind you of who you were made to be when you forget it, okay? So, don't be afraid to reach out to me. We are still obviously fairly small. I have almost no subscribers. And so, just feel free to drop a line if you need that. If you have any critiques on something, or, just in a way that would make things more conducive, things that would make it easier for everybody to understand what I'm saying. Because again, my brain works a little different than y'all's. I explain things a little bit differently, and sometimes a little too in depth. Like some people just want, 1 plus 1, or they want 2 plus 2 equals 4. They don't want 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 4. They want the 2 plus 2. And so if y'all are 2 plus 2ers, that's why the website and the reflection sheets will be there. But if you're a 1 plus 1 plus 1er, then you'll appreciate how much I break stuff down. But if it's hard for you to follow, again, I will have the notes, and I will have the things on the website very, very soon, and resources for you guys to use. Eventually I will start posting some of my art as well, so you guys can see my art, and if you want to support me in that way, you are more than welcome to. And I send you my love, and I love you guys, and I'll chat at you next time.